So, Stephan, again, thank you for joining us, and tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is you do so our listeners can get a little more insight to you.
Sure. So I'm based in LA. Like you said, I'm the executive editor of Hornet. We're a queer social network. We've been around since 2011. We've got just over 35 million users worldwide. A lot of those users are in places you might not expect. So places like Russia, Indonesia, Turkey, places where I think a queer social network is actually more important than anywhere else, right?
Yeah.
For places that are dealing with, whether it's homophobic, tyrannical governments or horrible policies. So it's super fun. We as a social network, I think a lot of people, when they think of queer apps or gay apps, they go right to like Grindr, right? And this hookups, dating. And Hornet actually was founded as a competitor for Grindr way back in the day. But honestly, if you were to open it now, it's I would say it's not really that at all. It's almost like a queer version of Facebook or Instagram. It's feed based. You follow people, so you see their posts, and so there's a lot of articles and videos and photos. We actually just launched live video, so that's this whole new little ecosystem that's happening in the app. So we're getting, because doing live video is something that's already been on all these other platforms, but yeah, so I've been at Hornet for maybe 7 years now, maybe a little 7 years. I've really seen the company and our brand kind of change and mold and become this really cool thing. And we've got a lot of cool stuff, in the near future that I can't necessarily talk about.
Exclusive.
Yeah, but it's been fun. I mean, I come from a traditional media background, so I was the editor-in-chief of LA's gay magazine, Frontiers, for 7 years.
Word.
At Hornet, and I'm like a total magazine nerd and like traditional media nerd. I love magazines. I love holding like print.
I love a magazine.
Print. Yes.
I love a good hard copy.
That's my thing. So
okay. How did you get into media? Like, is that something you've always wanted to do, or?
So I actually, I moved to LA in 2004 for law school. And so I was in law school. I specialized in entertainment law. And I later went on and did that and took the bar and practiced for a couple years. But while I was in law school, I was the nightlife writer for Frontiers, the gay magazine, because I had gone on a date or two with one of the editors. He was like, oh, you party a lot, so why don't you be our nightlife writer?
Wow. That's what they tell me too.
Those years when I was in law school, going to parties because I had to for work, were like some of the best times of my life. And so that's how I got into it, actually. Like I never intended to go into media or work for a magazine. I just kind of fell into it that way. I practiced law for a couple years, and that coincided with when the economy kind of tanked. And so attorneys were getting laid off left and right, which for me meant, as someone who had just graduated, I was competing for these really competitive entertainment law jobs with people who had like 10 years of experience. So it was like, I'm never going to find a job in doing what I want to do. So I literally just switched industries, and Frontiers was looking for a new editor. And so I kind of completely shifted gears, started working at the magazine. So much fun. Those 7 years were amazing. But yeah, that's how I got into queer media. And
that's awesome.
Just blossomed from there.
You're comfortable using legal jargon in everyday conversation.
Oh my God, legal jargon.
I mean, I always say, and this is probably, stop me if this is super boring, but I always say, like, what you learn in law school is how to think like a lawyer, right? And that's not something that you turn off. Because God knows I would love for the debt to go away and maybe not have gone to law school. It's an but yeah, it's on some level, it's like something that, I can't turn off, because it's something that they like drill into for, 3 years. So yeah, legal jargon. Sure.
Yeah. Something that you said a little bit ago when you were talking about having Hornet in places, that's very important for, that may be important. And what do you think about Italy now removing protection for women, LGBTQ, and the disabled? Because obviously we're seeing a lot of places that, aren't America, even though America is pretty shitty right now too, but you're seeing a lot of other places where, the LGBTQ community is highly under attack. Do you think that Hornet really helps out in those places?
I think that having kind of like a digital home for queer people is important wherever you are, right, in the world. But yeah, when you're talking about places like Italy, where it's like, wait a minute, I thought we were good in Italy.
Right. Like, what happened?
We do our fashion with you.
It almost catches you off guard. But yeah, I think that those are places where digital community is even more important than ever, right? Because the physical community might not be there, or it might not feel safe, or for whatever reasons, right? Like even the idea that's, not as kind of, serious, I guess, but like a community of queer people who want to get together to, because they have shared interests, right? They want to like—
So everybody on this call. Everybody on this call is what you're saying. We get together, shared interests.
Yeah. So having a platform, all this stuff that's come up about like Facebook, like now we've seen behind the curtain and we all know how evil Facebook is. I think that the need for digital platforms that are created by queer people, that are created for queer people, are just that much more important, right? We all know someone who has been, had their Instagram posts removed because they were too sexual. Right?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Too political.
Or drag queens the whole time throughout quarantine, getting every video taken down.
Wow.
Yeah. No, it was horrible.
Well, and it happens to Hornet too. I mean, because we publish content, right? Like we publish articles.
Right.
And so if it's an article that we've written about, gay sexual health, it's deemed to be adult content and it's inappropriate for Facebook.
Against
instances where it's not, right? Like
yeah.
if it's in the title, then it's sexual. And we all know that's bullshit, right?
Yeah.
If something is for gay people or queer people, that doesn't mean it's sexual content.
Right.
Yeah, like we need platforms that understand that,
Right. So that leads me to my question. So what's like a common myth that you hear like working in like gay media? Or it's like, what is a misconception that people think of like when they hear what you do or where you work?
Well, it's interesting for me because Hornet is so well known in certain pockets of the world, but it's not necessarily in the United States yet, right? So for me, that's the biggest question I get is, what's Hornet? And so, going back to what I was saying, I think a lot of people, when they hear, oh, okay, it's a gay app, it's a queer app, so it's a hookup app, it's a dating app, right?
Right.
So we try really hard to fight this notion that like if it's a queer app, it has to be for sex and hooking up.
Right. See, that's where I was going.
Yeah.
Is it like a lot of like, oh, I bet you get, you hook up every night.
I remember when it first came out and remember being in the city when it was like they were promoting it at clubs and it was very much so along those lines where it was anti-hookup app type of situation. I remember that being.
And, to be clear, like we are a very sex positive app. There's obviously nothing wrong with hooking up and dating.
Right.
Fully, welcome our, users to connect in that way because, of course they will want to and they should. But it's also like, how many people do we know that use Instagram as a hookup app? Right.
Right.
But queer people can turn anything into a hookup app.
They can.
MySpace, baby, MySpace messaging.
Oh my God. That was nothing better than having a conversation. You just see a bunch of little green. They online. Little green.
I am not even kidding. I have you Scrabble Go.
Yeah.
I'll be like, damn, your picture's cute.
You know what? I was just sitting here thinking about when when I used to meet people that the TV show Degrassi that used to come on, I used to go, they used to have a little thing online where you could like pretend you're in school. Yeah, your avatar. Like you were in school and like you could talk to other classmates. And then I was like, at one point, I think dating this whole boy. And he's like sent me a whole letter in the mail. And I like gave my address. Why did I do that? I mean, he said he wasn't from here.
Right. Well, you know.
It's a little pen pal. He was cute. Sent me pictures. Mom, I said, what the fuck is this? Who's this little white boy waiting in my house? I don't know. I love that. So, I mean, listen, with everything that's been going on, how do you feel the pandemic affected like Hornet and how you guys were putting out information? Did you feel that your information had to take a shift, or did you try to still deliver some entertaining news in such a difficult time?
Yeah. Well, so luckily, Hornet's always been like all of our, we have team members all over the world, literally like on every continent, and everyone works remotely. So the idea of like, okay, we can't all be in an office together was never an issue because we all work from home. And you know, I mean,
I love working from home.
Right? Can't go back. I mean, it's been a trip for me, like going from, you know, a magazine where I'm like in the office 14 hours a day to now I'm like at home, like what's in the refrigerator?
Right. It's on Netflix.
Right. But you know, it makes sense that during the pandemic, when people couldn't, you know, connect in person, they went, you know, everything went digital, right?
Right.
Right. Yeah. Work went digital. All of our kind of daily social interactions went digital. And so we did see, you know, we saw that reflected in the app. People needed to connect with other people, even though they couldn't do it in person. And so for Hornet, that meant we were producing a lot of live content. So we put together an event called the Great Gay Stay-In, where it was like a day of live programming, everything from stand-up comedy to a cooking demonstration to like cool stuff like that. So we did that when the pandemic was really at its peak. But I think, you know, the pandemic will probably have lasting effects just on social culture forever, right? Like this idea of like Zoom, like everyone knows what Zoom is now, right? Like,
yeah, that blew up.
Yeah, I mean, Zoom.
How did Skype not?
Well, Skype was already,
Zoom just kind of like took over.
Well, Skype was bought out, I think, by Microsoft a while back.
I was going to say Teams.
And then Microsoft, when they bought Skype, they were not promoting them and marketing them. They were only they took everything from Skype to make their own like messaging thing, which was Microsoft Teams.
Right, and because I think they just bought the technology.
Yeah, and
said, you can keep your funky name.
Yeah, and Skype kind of just drowned into the background. I mean, a lot of people, it really does, because they could have really done well.
I remember Skype was how I communicated when my brother lived in Cambridge. Like, it was a lot of people used it for cross-continental messaging back in the day.
And then Kik was around.
Oh yeah.
And then after Kik, it's WhatsApp, which is obviously most popular.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, so go ahead, Adam. Do you have a question?
Well, I guess so. My question is like, what is like an important lesson you've learned over your career here at Hornet? Here, like I work at Hornet. There.
So professional.
Learned. Well, our user base is so international that, I mean, I never, not on any other platforms, like not on Facebook, not on Instagram, not on Twitter, did I find myself interacting in real time with, you know, gays in Russia and gays in Indonesia and Thailand and Mexico and France, like, right? Like we're having conversations about articles between, you know, users from all of those places. So that's something that you don't really get from most platforms. And so I've learned so much about just these other cultures that I would never really, you know, have organically like come into contact with. And
I love that. Yeah, because it's very important, I think, to experience other things,
other cultures. You know, it's different everywhere you go.
Well, and also that like I've learned that it's silly to kind of pigeonhole culture, like for instance with Russia. I think that Americans and just the West in general has this image in their head of Russia where it's like Dante's Inferno. Like it's this horrible place for queer people. And what I've learned is, because we have so many users in Russia. And it turns out that we post a lot of content that's about Russia because they're always making news for doing shady shit.
They are.
Very that.
Stealing an election, anyone?
Right. So we hear from our, gay men, queer people in Russia that it's like that they really push back on that idea that it's some hell for queer people over there. And it is, I think, in huge swaths of that country. But we hear from our users who are based in St. Petersburg and Moscow, like, it's not what you guys are making it to be. It's, we go out to gay bars. So that's been really eye-opening for me because I think there's not a lot of Western media, Western queer media that I think is telling like the full story of their experience. So that's been really interesting.
Right. Oh, I love that.
Because we see so many times where we just think everyone else has. I said at the beginning of this, it's like, oh, America's shitty, but not as bad as some other places, which, I mean, yes, in certain places like Italy, things are bad. But it's interesting to hear that people like, yo, we live a regular life like you. Like, we go to the gay clubs, we do the same shit you do.
I was going to say, because now you saw that Eternals is now banned in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar.
Yeah.
So it's like, we bitch and moan and we complain, but
they're
props to Disney because the reason it's getting banned is because Disney is refusing to make them a non-gay edit.
Right.
Exactly.
And
I'm the biggest MCU nerd ever. I saw Eternals last night. Props to Disney because I was really worried that it was going to be another instance of the big Hollywood studio bows down to these homophobic countries, gives them a non-gay, non-queer edit, like for Rocket Man and Bohemian Rhapsody. He said no, and props to them for that. We'll see if they, keep that stance when China starts moaning.
Right. Keep that same energy.
I loved seeing that headline today.
Yeah, I think it's really important. And a lot of times we go into these movies, and I think reflected back for us as a queer community, we think it's going to be more queer because the media has almost said, like Beauty and the Beast comes to my mind when they said, oh, LeFou's going to be gay. I went to the theater, I said, all right, so we're going to see him and Gaston end up together. Like, I didn't know.
Right.
I said, is Gaston not going to fall off the roof? We showed up and the only scene that happened was he was dancing with a woman and it transitioned to a boy and like he went into the boy's arms. That was it. And I was just like, oh, well, I mean, he's always had that same, I kind of want Gaston energy, even in the cartoon. Yeah. So I didn't see a big difference. And, the Power Rangers movie that came out with Becky G as Trini, they were like, first lesbian character. And like, it was mentioned in passing that she may like girls.
Yeah. Well, and the MCU itself doesn't have a great track record.
Right.
Like we ran an article a couple years ago about opportunities that the MCU had to kind of bring some queer content into the franchise and just didn't, right? Like Thompson, her character Valkyrie, who is very queer in the comic books, they've hinted at it maybe in the movie.
Very queer.
That doesn't count. It's almost like the whole Dumbledore is gay thing, where after all the books came out and She Who Shall Not Be Named.
Right.
Said, wow, yeah. By the way, Dumbledore's gay. And we're like, that doesn't count.
Yeah.
You got gay in the books doing something gay. That is not representation. That does not count.
It's not.
And they think it is. And it's like, that's literally
it's a cheap shot.
It is a cheap shot.
It's what a lot of, studios do. They queer code their characters where we obviously see ourselves in these people. And it's like, come on. Well, but they don't ever say anything or they don't talk about it.
Well,
they leave it up to interpretation.
Most famous is Sharpay's brother Ryan from High School Musical. Like, it wasn't until after the fact that it was kind of like, and then Lucas Grabeel himself was like, oh no, I didn't really want to play him as gay. And it's just like, so you made a caricature out of us. I mean, a lot of people were upset. Right. You're a Marvel nerd, like the rest of us here. You probably are familiar with Endgame when they had a gay mourner, like the studio had someone come in and play that, and it was like, so that's the gay character y'all were talking
to. The directors.
It was one of the directors. Yeah, they as like the studio had all of these articles about you're gonna see gay character emerge and Marvel's Endgame, and that was it.
Yeah.
Well, and Venom, maybe you guys remember when Venom 2 just came out.
Oh yeah.
Every queer outlet had a story about, because Andy Serkis, the director, said something about how this movie sees Venom come out and he goes to some queer nightlife party. And I was like, I actually had a visceral reaction because I was like, we don't need that. If you're not going to do it right,
Yeah.
Right. Like, we don't need any representation. We need good representation.
Right.
So
Right.
do it right. Just keep it. Like, we're good.
Right. I'm good on that, love.
Scraps, you know, do it right or just don't
better
do it.
Ingredients, better pizza.
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, but that's been happening so much in media, and that's been happening so much in media, and I just wish that it would change. And I mean, we're still not seeing that. I mean, what was the Disney and Pixar movie that just came out? It was with the two boys.
Onward.
No. Well, that one too.
Oh,
they had the lesbian.
Dean and DeLuca.
Yeah, Luca.
Luca.
Was it just Luca?
Yeah,
it's
Luca.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was looking for something like Luca and no.
Before I saw it, they were like, "Oh, it's a animated version of Baby Call Me by Your Name."
Right.
Oh my God.
What's his face? Who be eating people apparently? Don't he eat people?
Wait, eats people?
That was the no. What is his
No,
name?
I thought his name from Call Me by Your Name.
Army what?
Army
Hammer.
Army
Hammer.
Yeah,
Yes.
don't he like eat people?
Well,
He
he
does
did a lot
some.
of research into that. I'm not so sure about all of this.
I think
Army?
he just
Yeah.
had like he had a kink and of like
Mm.
I don't know of what, and I ain't trying to kink shame nobody. So
Uh,
whatever floats his boat, whatever floats his boat is his business. But it got out, and now
It's
people
not
don't wanna
going
work
over. It
with
doesn't look good.
It doesn't look. I mean,
Whatever it is, it doesn't look
there's
good.
another.
I don't know.
There was another, I believe, actor that it came out this weekend. A lady was like, "Listen, we had consensual sex, but the sex was so rough that like I didn't like it. And I want to report that it was just really, really rough for me, and I didn't like that. But it was consensual. So it's just like I think we're in a land right now when it comes to sex that people are kind of confused. That I mean, we might need to take the birds and bees class again. I don't know, but it seems like people might be a little bit confused on things, and it's interesting. I think it's an interesting conversation.
The bees, Home Depot.
Right.
Yeah. I love it. So tell us, Stephen, what's coming up for you next? We have a lot of new things coming out. I did love your article the other day, which featured Chucky talking about, I feel like the series has been very like queer forward and telling that story. Yeah. You know, with even Chucky acknowledging I have a child that is non-binary, like talking about that.
And it just shows like the growth.
And it's done so well. And I love that Don Mancini, an out gay director, creator, he's actually finally, I feel like, able to tell his story in Hollywood, because I feel like in the past Chucky might have had a little bit of homophobic feeling to it as a movie. And so I love that you guys really pointed out an article and gave the shout out to Sci-Fi and that network for really stepping ahead with that.
Yeah, well, I think it's always the representation that it's always the moments that feel so casual and like kind of like not throwaway conversations, but sometimes it is that, right? Like that can be more meaningful than like something that seems very like overwrought and like we're gonna make a very clear point about how we love queer people. Sometimes it is a throwaway. The line from Chucky where he's like, yeah, I have a queer kid, he's you know, non-binary or something, and the kid says, oh, and you were okay with it? And Chucky says, well, I'm not a monster,
right?
Like, you know, something that makes it seem like, well, duh, I support queer people is, I think, so much more valuable sometimes than like, you know what I mean?
Well, listen, Stephen, it's been amazing talking to you, and I want you to tell everyone what's coming up for you next and where can they find you and how to download and subscribe to Hornet.
Sure. So find Hornet, you know, in all of the app stores and the App Store and the Google Store. Find us on all the social media platforms at Hornet. I'm at Stephan Horbelt on all those same platforms. And yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was fun.
Yeah, amazing. I love the insight.
Yeah, so
it's very important to see a very positive, forward queer app that's not only like maybe making you meet the love of your dreams, but it can also give you this great information and that you know you can't find anywhere else in the world because it's being policed so horribly.
I know. I'm going to download it right after we get off this podcast.
Yes. So everyone,
see you on there, and you will see me on there. I guarantee it.
Okay.
So everyone, please go and follow Stephen and support Hornet. And Stephen, thank you so much for joining us here at Pride to Podcast, and come back and visit us anytime.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Stephen.
Bye.